Call us, email us, tweet, or Facebook us. It's not a conversation without you.
With us in our studio now is Major Brent Beardsley and Padre Alan Nicol, both with an incredible background on this issue of post-traumatic stress disorder. Welcome to Context.
Thank you.
Major Beardsley, you are currently teaching in the, for our military, but your post-traumatic stress experience is because you were the assistant to General Romeo Dallaire, Canada's most famous case of PTSD. And Padre, this is coming across your desk every day. So let's start with you, Padre. You served as military chaplain in Afghanistan, outside the wire, on the front line of combat. What kinds of spiritual questions are soldiers asking about what they're being exposed to?
Sometimes the questions were short and simple, like soldiers were asking questions about concerns for their family. Other times they were deep and philosophically profound. Padre, how do you reconcile the kind of suffering that you see here in this country? The question we sometimes ask, why do bad things happen to good people? If God is who you say he is, why doesn't he intervene? And depending on the day, it could be, Padre, is there life after death? What will happen to my family if something happens to me?
Major Beardsley, you asked those tough questions. It was just you and General Dallaire in Rwanda. At the most, there were 6 in your team. You're both men that bring faith to the battlefield. Major, what did you do to try and have your belief in God in that hellhole you were in?
Well, as a Christian before I went to Rwanda, and of course when it sunk into the hell that it became, what I leaned on heavily was my faith. And it was the prayers in the morning and the prayers at night that got me through days, over the night and on into the next day. Surprisingly, when I got home from Rwanda, a lot of people asked General Dallaire and asked myself the question. They said, you know, how is it that with everything you've seen and done, you can still believe in God? And General Dallaire said, I know I believe in God because in Rwanda I shook hands with the devil. For myself, my comeback to them was always, you know, why do we blame God for the actions of man? I never saw God at a roadblock with a machete chopping up a child. I never saw God going into a village with a machine gun to murder folks. I saw people doing that. If I lost faith with anything in Rwanda, I lost my faith in human beings and the great evil that they are capable of doing. But I certainly didn't lose my faith in God, and in fact, it was reinforced in my time there. So unlike some folks who, going through that experience, lose their faith, other ones find a faith, it sustained my faith and grew it.
Okay, but Padre, we just had Tom McEachern on, whose wife, Leona, a corporal who committed suicide over PTSD, and you heard Tom say, we are both still believers. She went to her death in suicide as a believer in God's hope. Help me understand this, because this is really, our spiritual life is really put to a test with this kind of, with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Lorna, I'm convinced there's some things in life we can't reconcile. The questions are too huge. But I'm more strongly convinced that our spirituality can make a huge difference.
Okay.
In journeying down these difficult roads.
Okay, and you both have spoken about disciplines. And Major Beardsley, you don't know this, I should have told you this offset, but when we interviewed General Dallaire, he said you used to sit in the corner with your earphones on and do silly songs in the morning. You had spiritual disciplines. Yeah. Okay, tell me about this.
Well, scripture every morning and prayer and music in the morning before I went to work, and then prayer and Bible study at night before I went to bed. That was until the war started. Then when the war started, I lost my Bible, I lost my music, I lost everything. So after that, it was strictly with prayer. But, you know, I'd had those disciplines, and I was able to sustain them up to the war point, and beyond that with just prayer.
Not everybody goes to the field, Padre, equipped with a Christian background or a good... where do you even begin to access?
Well, a good starting point is a unit chaplain. we had chaplains deployed with our soldiers in Afghanistan. We have chaplains on our bases here in Canada.
Or today, if you're suffering today, get to the community of God's people that best works for you, and you have to shop around sometimes a little bit, but get to God's people.
Well, and that's another aspect of spirituality that we often forget, is there's a huge resource there in our faith communities. As a Christian, my church community, it's a family. When I deployed, and my wife and family were here in Canada, we didn't just have the Military Family Resource Center, the rear party from the unit. We had my local church to support. And when you talk about providing support to soldiers, a faith community is huge. Our base chapels can be a wonderful resource to soldiers who've deployed and who've come back. Churches within our communities are often very receptive.
Major Beardsley, what do you think as you watch, like this is becoming a national disaster?
It is, but it's a price that we're going to pay if Canadian governments believe that we have to deploy forces to protect Canadian values and protect Canadian interests, to protect Canada and to protect Canadians. It's a price that you're going to pay. There is no solution to this problem. If somebody's looking to a solution so that we'll have a zero PTSD rate, it's just not going to happen. This is a problem that has existed throughout history, back to the time of the Romans and Alexander, right up to the present. This is not something that's come out of modernity. My grandfather came out of the First World War. He served in the trenches for 4 years. He didn't get home to 1919. He'd hardly ever had a drink in his life. He became an alcoholic. He abandoned his family during the Depression, and he ended up dying on the side of a road in London, Ontario. My father went to the Second World War. He had a horrendous problem with alcohol. So this is not something new. This has existed forever, and it's a price that the country is going to have to be prepared to pay if it wants to protect itself. And by doing that, by saying we want these young men and women from Canada to take this contract of unlimited liability, we will send them anywhere, anytime to do any type of mission, then there is a social contract that exists between this country and its government and those individuals that says if you are killed, we will take care of your families. And if you are injured or wounded or sickened by what you experience, we will take care of you. And if the country is not prepared to live up to its obligations, then the country has to take second thoughts on whether or not we're going to defend and protect this country. Or do we just surrender it and turn it over to whoever wants it?
All right.
That's the price.
Boy, in my faith tradition, that is called loving your neighbor. Amen. We're going to be back with both of you for some closing comments on this, and we'll continue our conversation in just a moment.
We want you to be a part of our studio audience. If you're in the Toronto area, contact us. We want to hear from you.
Well, we've wrestled today with ways to show compassion for those living with post-traumatic stress disorder from our Canadian military. And we're going to close now with comments from both of you, Padre and Major. You both are followers of the teachings of Jesus. What inspiration have you drawn from that? Major, let's start with you.
Mine is that bad things happen to good people, and Christians are not immune from this. Christians get cancer. Christians get heart disease. Christians are the victims of violent crimes. Christians will also be the casualties in war, either the physical casualties during the battle or the psychological casualties after the battle. But throughout, there is a God that loves you there and has a plan for your life. And it may not make any sense at the time, but it's there. And you have to reach out and you have to ask for it. In the same way many of our veterans have got to come forward and say, I've got a problem, I need help, to their commanding officer, to the medical officer, the chaplain, whoever. That's the same thing that Christians have to do, is to reach out to God and say, help.
Padre, inspiration you've drawn.
My strength and my hope comes from God's word, from the scriptures. And Jesus said himself, come unto me, all of you who are weary and burdened and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. As a soldier, we train physically, we train mentally, we train emotionally, we prepare to deploy, and I'm grateful that we're working at developing this spirituality. But my encouragement to soldiers, period, is develop that aspect of your life that we often don't think about.
If you're a family now affected by post-traumatic stress disorder watching and you need help, drop us an email or call us, and we will get you connected to the care you do need. And more resources are also on our website. For all of us at Context, I'm Lorna Duick.